Sean, a dedicated employee, misses an important presentation when he heroically saves an elderly woman. But instead of being praised, he's unfairly blamed and fired by his incompetent boss, Chris. Just when it seems like everything is falling apart, a mysterious black luxury car approaches. Who is the person stepping out, and why are they here for Sean? This unexpected encounter could change everything. Sean, you idiot. How dare you miss the important presentation? Chris, the department head, was an incompetent man promoted solely because he was the CEO's son, and I regularly suffered his unreasonable power harassment. On my way to the meeting, I saved an elderly woman from falling down the stairs at the subway station, but that caused me to be late for the presentation. Incompetent as he was, Chris tried to handle the presentation alone and failed miserably, losing the contract. He tried to blame the entire failure on my tardiness. The next day, when I arrived at work, Chris told me I was being fired for the previous day's mistake. Suddenly losing my job, I stood in shock as a black luxury car pulled up in front of me, and the elderly woman I had saved stepped out.
You've just left your job, haven't you?
I was astonished at how she seemed to know I had been fired.
I've come to pick you up.
The old woman's puzzling words continued. When I heard about her status and intentions, my astonishment only grew. My name is Sean Miller. I'm 26 years old this year. After graduating from high school, I've worked in the sales department of a local ceramics manufacturing company for the past 8 years. The ceramics manufacturer I work for primarily deals in industrial use products. By adjusting the raw materials and their proportions and refining the processing methods, ceramics can gain new properties. My company has extensive experience in fine-tuning these material combinations, with a strong reputation for developing new materials tailored to specific applications. Despite being a small local company, our firm has maintained steady performance over the years, largely thanks to this development capability. This year, our company has just launched an improved version of an existing product by altering its composition to enhance its performance. In the sales department, where I belong, promoting this new product to various companies is currently our top priority. In my work, I prioritize understanding not only the performance of our own products, but also the features of competitors' products to identify our strengths. Other companies' sales representatives also pitch to our clients, so it's crucial to clearly explain how our products stand out when compared to the competition. Before making a sales pitch, I always prepare presentation materials that clearly highlight our product's strengths at a glance. It seemed I had a knack for this meticulous work, and the materials I painstakingly created were always well received by clients. My colleagues in the sales department had increasingly used my materials to achieve successful sales. Recently, one of my peers shared some news with me. Sean, there's a rumor that you'll be promoted to team leader in the next personnel changes. This colleague was well connected within the company and good at picking up on personnel rumors with a reasonably high accuracy rate. However, since I hadn't received any such offers, I brushed it off lightly. You've seen my performance graph, right? For the past 8 years, I've consistently stayed around the department average. I'm not a problem, but I'm certainly not in a position to be praised. There's no reason for me to be promoted. Well, it seems the CEO is starting to talk about valuing contributions that aren't easily reflected in numbers. Apparently, there's a move to actively recognize those who work behind the scenes. How do you know what the CEO is saying? Talk like this comes up all the time if you chat around. You're just too out of touch with the company gossip. I don't like gossiping or being gossiped about. Most people love gossip. Sometimes it even helps to share some idle chatter with clients to lighten the atmosphere. It's a sales technique. I'm not good at that kind of talk, but I make up for it with thorough preparation of materials. Exactly. Word has reached management that the materials you create are well received by clients. It seems the CEO decided that contributions not reflected in the numbers should be recognized. Really? So that's why they want to make me a team leader? That's right. I appreciate the recognition, but I'm not the type to lead people. I'd be more grateful for a position as a sales material specialist. You're so unambitious. Sure, having a title comes with more responsibilities, but it also means a higher salary. You should jump at the opportunity. A salary increase, huh? Yeah, I could use that. You've been enduring a tough life for a long time. Isn't it about time you treated yourself to a bit of a reward? When my colleague mentioned that I've been living a tough life, it wasn't because I was being overworked on a low salary. This company wasn't a major corporation, but it was known locally for offering decent pay. What my colleague referred to as a tough life was mostly about the environment I grew up in. I was raised in a single-parent household. My parents divorced when I was very young, and I already had a younger sister who was 3 years my junior at the time. Our mother took us in and worked tirelessly to raise us on her own. The year I entered high school and my sister entered middle school, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, probably due to overworking. She continued to work but collapsed when I was in my 3rd year. Once she fell ill, the disease progressed rapidly, and within a few months of battling it, she passed away. She had refused expensive treatments, but during her last months, my sister and I decided to secretly borrow money from relatives to pay for her treatment, hoping to extend her life even by a little. How much the expensive treatment prolonged her life remains unclear, but for my sister and me, there was no choice but to do everything we could for our mother. After the funeral, I juggled part-time jobs to graduate high school and started working at this company. My sister, too, said she would work immediately after finishing middle school, but I persuaded her to at least graduate from high school. When I saw how well she performed academically in high school, I decided to support her through university and continued to cover her tuition fees. Thanks to this, my sister secured a job at a major corporation in New York last year. I had been covering living expenses for 2 people, her tuition fees, and repaying the debt to our relatives. Naturally, I lived a frugal life since starting work, but I never considered it tough. The relatives who lent us money for our mother's treatment were understanding and didn't impose a repayment deadline or interest. Thanks to this, I managed to save a little by living frugally and had repaid most of the debt. Since my sister started working, she has also been helping with the repayments. Though she landed a good job, she's still a new hire, so her salary hasn't increased significantly. Even so, she insists on covering the remaining debt, saying it's her turn after all the struggles I went through. While I appreciated her offer, I didn't change my repayment pace. With my sister's help, we were on track to fully repay the debt in about 2 more years. Given my current financial situation, I was very receptive to the idea of a pay raise that would come with a title. A higher salary would allow me to repay the debt faster. Although my sister never mentioned it, she was likely still cutting back on her expenses to contribute to the repayments. At a time in her early 20s when she should be enjoying life and treating herself, she was making sacrifices. If I accepted the promotion and accelerated the debt repayment, my sister could sooner start using her money for herself and enjoy her life. In that sense, I genuinely hoped the rumors about the promotion were true. Before leaving, my colleague mentioned something that slightly worried me. By the way, how have things been with Chris lately? How do you think? I'm managing somehow. Be careful. There's a rumor that he's strongly against your promotion. Don't bring up such bad news. Besides, what exactly should I be careful about? Knowing that your enemy might be plotting something isn't bad information to have, right? Well, I suppose. With that, my conversation with my colleague ended. Thinking about Chris, whom my colleague bluntly referred to as my enemy, darkened and weighed heavily on my mood. Chris was the department head of the sales department I belonged to. When I joined the company, he was still a section Ruth, but he became the department head 2 years ago, overseeing the sales department. Within the company, Chris was notorious for his habitual power harassment. The most troublesome thing was that Chris was the CO's son. I believe the only reason the unpopular Chris was able to become the sales department head was this familial connection. From what I've seen since I joined, Chris hasn't achieved any notable accomplishments. On the contrary, I could list countless examples of his mistakes. What stood out most was his constant unreasonable yelling at subordinates. There were apparently people in upper management who thought poorly of Chris. However, since he was the CO's son, it was difficult to criticize him openly. In fact, I had been targeted by Chris since I first joined the company. My colleague asked about my relationship with Chris because he knew I was subjected to daily harassment. I still don't understand why I became Chris's target. Perhaps my relatively good evaluations, despite only having a high school diploma, irked Chris's fragile ego. After the initiation ceremony, the first time I greeted him, Chris attacked me out of nowhere. "So you're Sean?" "Yes. I look forward to working with you." "It's pointless." "Excuse me? I'm saying it's pointless to guide an idiot like you with only a high school diploma. Do you want to know which university I graduated from? It's the famous." Chris proudly named a prestigious university. Indeed, it was a well-known university, but as someone with little work experience, I was taken aback by Chris's high-handed manner and couldn't respond. In hindsight, that might have been the first time I displeased Chris. "What's with that face? Don't you have anything to say? That's an impressive university, yes." "How is it impressive? Explain." "Oh, well, you don't know anything, and you just gave me a random compliment. You're incredibly careless. Listen up. The university I graduated from." Saying that, Chris continued to lecture about the greatness of his alma mater for more than 10 minutes. I understood that his university was prestigious, but what it had to do with Chris's personal character or abilities, I still don't get. Then, my days of enduring Chris's power harassment began. Whenever there was a mistake at work, Chris would nonchalantly report it as my fault. Giving a rookie a chance backfired. High school graduates are just like this. He would take on an unreasonable amount of work and dump it all on me regularly. "Hey Sean, finish the comparative data analysis of these materials and submit it to the client by tomorrow. There are over 10 papers, including Chinese ones. I have other work, so at least give me a few days." Stop whining. Just say "yes, sir" to my orders. "But, you useless fool, are you defying me?" In the end, I stayed overnight at the company, working myself to exhaustion to compile the data. Due to the rush, there were some minor gaps in the data, which led to me having to visit the client later to apologize, taking full responsibility. This was how things went with Chris all the time. One day, I was assigned to go on an outside sales call with Chris. A new client who showed interest in our new product contacted us, and Chris took on the presentation. Frankly, Chris's presentation skills were poor. His lack of ability always needed to be covered by someone in the sales department, and this time, it fell to me. Regardless of the outcome, Chris would take the credit, and if there were mistakes, I would be blamed. That day, Chris had another client visit in the morning, so we planned to meet directly at the client's office. Chris openly stated he hated looking at shoddy materials made by a high school graduate and had no intention of using my presentation materials. But his own materials were genuinely subpar. Moreover, his speaking skills were disastrous, and if I didn't join him, the presentation would surely fail. I planned to leave with plenty of time, but an urgent call from a client delayed me, and by the time I finished, it was almost time for the meeting. The train to the client's location ran infrequently, and missing it would make me late. I hurried to the station and passed through the ticket gate. The train was arriving in 3 minutes. With no announcements yet, I thought I could make it if I walked briskly. I looked up at the stairs leading to the platform, seeing a casually dressed man standing about 7 steps up, patting his body as if looking for something. Suddenly, he turned and started bounding down the stairs. He seemed to realize he'd forgotten something important and rushed back to get it. I understood the urgency, but running down a sparsely populated staircase was reckless. People were startled and stepped aside to avoid him. At eye level, I saw an elderly lady in a dress. She noticed the man rushing down but couldn't react quickly enough. The man brushed past her, catching her sleeve and pulling her down. I heard the lady gasp. The man didn't notice and kept running past me, but I only saw the elderly lady falling backward. She was about 2 meters away, and without thinking, I closed the distance. I caught her, but my backward step missed the stair. I fell down the stairs with the lady in my arms. It was over 2 meters, but fortunately, one of my feet hit the ground before my body did, which significantly cushioned the impact. Even so, when I landed on my back with the elderly lady's weight on my chest, I passed out. I must have been unconscious for only a short time. Suddenly, I noticed a crowd of people looking down at me. I heard them asking, "Are you okay?" And that's when my memory came back. I tried to sit up, grimacing at the pain in my back. I checked myself over and managed to get up halfway. I was sore all over, but nothing seemed broken. I could breathe without any problems.
Are you okay? I'd like to take you to a hospital.
I heard a voice from the side and turned to see the elderly lady I had caught kneeling next to me. Her neatly styled hair was a bit disheveled, but she didn't seem injured. I felt relieved just as I heard the train departure announcement above. The train I was supposed to catch had just left. I stood up hurriedly, but I could clearly hear the train leaving. I missed it. Immediately, Chris's angry face popped into my mind. The next train was over 30 minutes away. If I waited for it, I'd definitely miss the meeting. I decided the quickest way was to take a taxi. I knew there would be traffic at the time, but it was the best option. "Excuse me, I'm in a hurry. Please move," I shouted as I stood, pushing through the crowd to get outside.
Wait. Please, can I have your name?
The elderly lady caught my arm as I tried to leave. I couldn't just shake her off, so I quickly handed her my business card and ran out of the station without looking back. I immediately hailed a taxi and gave the driver the client's name and general location. As the taxi started moving, I took out my smartphone to tell Chris I'd be about 10 minutes late. But then I let out a groan. The screen was shattered, and it didn't respond to my touch. It must have been crushed when I fell down the stairs. All I could do was hope the taxi would get me to the client's place as soon as possible. Things got worse when the taxi hit a traffic jam just before reaching the client's location. Frustrated, I paid the fare and got out, running the remaining kilometer. I believe I was about a mile from my destination, but the pain in my back made it take me nearly 10 minutes. In the end, I arrived at the client's entrance almost 20 minutes late. As I rushed through the gate, I saw Chris leaving the entrance. He looked furious, walking like a thug in a comedy sketch, kicking his feet out. When he saw me running in, he stormed over and grabbed my collar. "Sean, you bastard. How dare you miss the important presentation? Please listen. There was an incident at the station, and I missed the train. I tried to call, but my phone broke. I showed him my broken phone, but Chris immediately slapped it out of my hand. Don't lie. You probably smashed an old phone to make excuses for being late." I tried desperately to explain what had happened at the station, but Chris wouldn't listen. "You were supposed to bring the materials. Without them, even I couldn't give a satisfactory explanation. The deal is off. It's all your fault. Take responsibility." Despite always saying he never wanted to see my materials, Chris claimed that the lack of those materials ruined the deal. Probably, Chris used his own shoddy materials, gave a sloppy presentation, and ended it in just 15 minutes, including greetings. The client was likely so appalled by the lackluster presentation that they cut it short and sent Chris packing. That's why Chris came out looking so disgruntled. The moment he saw me, he decided to pin all the blame for his failure on my lateness. I still tried to explain my reasons for being late, but the fact that I was late was undeniable. "I'll report this to the company. You're dismissed for today." That's an order. Chris planned to go back alone and spin the story to his advantage. But since he declared it as a direct order, I had no choice but to go home quietly. I arranged to have my phone repaired and went home, but I was so worried about what kind of report Chris might give the company that I couldn't sleep. The next day, before the morning meeting, Chris approached me and pulled me into an empty meeting booth. I had a very bad feeling. "Chris, I apologize for the trouble I caused yesterday." "Oh, that's fine. It's in the past." "What?" "I have something to give you." Chris handed me a document with a big smile. Seeing it, I froze. "Is this a termination notice? Congratulations. You're now free from the company. Enjoy your newfound freedom." "Wait, please. What is this?" "Even if I'm being terminated, there should be a proper reason given. A termination notice can be given verbally. I'm telling you now, you botched a crucial deal yesterday. Consider this your punishment. At least let me speak to HR. Look at this document. It's signed by the HR director. Indeed, the document was issued with the HR director's approval. Even if Chris was the CEO's son and saw me as an obstacle, he didn't have the authority to fire employees at will." While I couldn't trust Chris's words, it was a fact that the company had decided to terminate my employment. Even if Chris had blamed me for yesterday's mistake, I never imagined it would lead to such an extreme measure. I had been too naive. "So, while the official termination is a bit away, there's no work for you here anymore. Get out. You're not allowed on company property unless I say so. At least let me say goodbye to everyone. Shut up. Because of you, I lost a deal I had in the bag. If I were the CEO, you'd be getting a disciplinary dismissal, but I'm letting you off easy with a regular termination. If you keep complaining, I'll make sure you can't get another job." It was absurd. Even if I was at fault for yesterday, this kind of abuse shouldn't be allowed. I wanted to speak directly with someone in HR, but Chris wouldn't let me. He even threatened to call security, so I was forced out of the building. "Retirement paperwork will be sent by mail. Never show that stupid face again." Chris spat these parting words and left. I could only watch his back, shaking with clenched fists. Unable to comprehend why the company had officially decided to fire me, I paced around the company building several times. Suddenly, my sister came to mind. How would I tell her about this? How would I handle the remaining debt? As I thought about it, I slumped my shoulders, and a black luxury car stopped right in front of me. I immediately assumed it was a company executive visiting my workplace. As I was about to leave to avoid being in the way, a voice called out to my back.
"Sean, please wait."
When I turned around at the sound of my name, I saw the elderly lady I had helped at the station yesterday getting out of the car.
"I've come to pick you up. Please get in."
She greeted me politely, and I remembered handing her my business card the day before as we parted. "Did you come all this way just to thank me for yesterday?" But it wasn't necessary.
"Well, I thought the CEO mentioned that I would be coming to pick you up today."
What? Something felt off in our conversation. The elderly lady seemed to share this sentiment and looked a bit uneasy.
"It seems there's been a communication mix-up. Today, I indeed came to thank you for yesterday. But more importantly, my main purpose is to bring you to our company."
"Bring me to your company? What do you mean?"
"I'll explain everything in detail. But could you please get in the car so we're not standing here talking?"
Prompted once more, I got into the car and sat beside the elderly lady. As the car started moving, the elderly lady, who introduced herself as Ruth Johnson, began to explain the situation. It turned out that Ruth was the chairwoman of a major equipment manufacturing company. This company had been a major client, purchasing ceramic products from my company for many years. Ruth was so moved by my assistance at the station that she immediately contacted my company's CEO and requested to have me transferred to her company. The CEO, who had recently recognized my supporting role in the sales department and was about to promote me to a leadership position, was reluctant at first. However, after being earnestly requested by Ruth, the CEO, he eventually agreed, prioritizing the benefit of having a stable, long-term relationship with a major client by having me join their company.
"I had asked your CEO to explain things carefully, as I thought a sudden transfer might confuse you. When I saw you leave the building, I assumed you had already been informed."
I see. I'm sorry, but I haven't received any explanation from the CEO yet.
It seems there was a miscommunication. Perhaps I was too demanding.
I finally understood what had happened to me up until that point. In short, Ruth, who had taken a liking to me because of the incident yesterday, had very forcefully recruited me to her company. The CEO of my company was supposed to explain everything to me in detail, knowing how surprised I would be by such sudden news. However, Chris had intervened, making the situation strange. Chris, knowing through the CEO that I would be fired today, assumed that he had successfully pinned the previous day's mistake on me. He took the dismissal notice from the HR department and presented it to me. Originally, I would have been summoned to the CEO's office at the start of the workday, received a proper explanation, and then been ready for Ruth's arrival. I was stunned by the sudden realization that I was about to be promoted to a large corporation. On the way to Ruth's company, she once again thanked me for risking myself to save her. Moreover, she had learned from my CEO about the hardships I had endured to pay for my sister's tuition. Receiving such praise from the chairwoman of a major corporation felt surreal, and I was floating in disbelief for a while. Eventually, the car arrived at the massive headquarters of the manufacturing company, where Ruth served as chairwoman. There, I was introduced to a woman who appeared to be around my age. The woman, Ruth's granddaughter, was named Kimberly Johnson, and she was the CEO of the company despite her young age. In a short time, I was transferred to a prestigious company and received a warm welcome from both the chairwoman and the young CEO. Kimberly told me with tears in her eyes that if I hadn't been there yesterday, her grandmother Ruth might have lost her life, and she thanked me sincerely. As a result, I started working at this manufacturing company as a sales representative, free to do my job as I pleased. There were no unreasonable bosses like Chris in this company, and I was given the freedom to work as I saw fit. I was granted significant authority in creating sales materials, my specialty, and I began to renew the company's product materials one after another. These sales materials were highly praised not only by clients, but also by various departments within the company, and my name became widely known. Subsequently, I had numerous opportunities for presentations, and my straightforward explanations were well received, leading to the successful conclusion of important deals. In less than 6 months, I had established myself as a top sales representative. Ruth's insight in forcefully recruiting me was recognized both within and outside the company. One day, I was summoned by Kimberly.
We are about to sign a major deal with your former company. Since it's about ceramics, I need you to attend the presentation.
Understood. It feels strange to see my old company's presentation as a client, but I'll make sure everything goes smoothly. After that exchange, the time for the presentation arrived. I attended the meeting, and to my surprise, I met Chris again after more than 6 months. I had assumed that my old company would send a presentation professional, so I was astonished to see Chris show up alone. Most likely, Chris had driven away his subordinate to hog all the glory for himself on this big stage. Chris was capable of such petty actions. He seemed surprised to see me, casting me a complicated glance. But when Kimberly prompted him, he began the presentation with a showy attitude. I had expected that Chris's presentation skills might have improved over the past 6 months, but that was an overestimation. Chris's presentation skills had deteriorated instead. His vaunted self-made materials were sparse and poorly balanced, lacking essential information. His talk, which was supposed to fill in the gaps, was disjointed. It seemed that Chris didn't have a good grasp of the essential product knowledge. The presentation ended in just over 10 minutes, an exceedingly short duration. Given the sparse content and short time, we didn't get the information we were expecting. With an exasperated look from Kimberly, I began to question Chris about the absolutely necessary points to judge the contract. Each time I asked a question, Chris hastily flipped through his materials and ended up calling his company's technical department, repeating my questions to them and parroting their answers back to me, a pitiful sight. Well, if that's the case, I'd be quicker to talk directly with the technical department. Could you pass the phone to me? Unable to endure the pointless waste of time, I blurted out my honest feelings. At that moment, Chris's face, which had been plastered with a strained smile, twisted with anger. Hey Sean, do you think you can act all high and mighty just because you're the client now? How dare you be so disrespectful to me, your great benefactor? Chris, this is a business meeting. Bringing up our past relationship is inappropriate. You're the one who failed to give a proper presentation, which led to this situation. You insolent brat. Don't get cocky. Are you trying to belittle me even though you are a high school graduate?
Excuse me, Chris? Please calm down. Sean hasn't said anything wrong. I've never seen someone yell like this in a business meeting before. As a department head, you should at least maintain a demeanor that suits your position.
Damn it, all of you talking down to me. Having been spoken to as an equal, someone he deeply despised, Chris had already lost all self-control. His reckless anger now turned toward Kimberly without mercy. You have no eye for people. Why did you let Sean, of all people, attend my presentation? There's no way this incompetent fool could understand my presentation. Why don't you get that? Chris, that's enough. Shut up. All you've done is ask meaningless questions. Our product is perfect. Just sign the damn contract.
Chris, I can't let such absurd demands go unnoticed.
Shut up. A woman like you shouldn't be so arrogant. Women should just shut up and listen to what competent men say. Enough, Chris. Do you realize who you're talking to? I don't care who she is. I know the real power in this company lies with the chairwoman, and that chairwoman is good friends with my father. I can talk over your heads to the chairwoman and get the contract done. This lady here is our CO, and she is also the chairwoman's granddaughter. Do you think the chairwoman will stay silent after you insult her? Chris's offensive words were so outrageous that I responded with a voice louder than I'd ever use normally. I quickly apologized to Kimberly for raising my voice, then turned back to Chris, who had gone pale. Are you saying that she is the granddaughter of the chairwoman? My father never mentioned anything about this. I apologize for my rudeness. Mr. Johnson, please keep this matter confidential from the chairwoman.
Indeed, there are rumors that my grandmother holds the real power in this company, and I can't deny it. She helps make up for my shortcomings. That's true.
Oh well.
But I don't appreciate being openly told that to my face. This contract is now void. I can't sign anything in such a hostile environment.
Wait. This contract is crucial for our company. If we don't finalize it soon, our overall performance this quarter will suffer.
I need this contract too. That's why I'll request someone else from your company to start the negotiations over from scratch.
Wait, I'll explain everything from the beginning again.
Do I need to spell it out for you? Chris, you are banned from entering our company. Unless someone else represents your company, this deal will not proceed.
No way. Hey, Sean, say something. What am I supposed to say for someone who insulted the CO? Moreover, as a high school graduate, I can't possibly defend someone with your esteemed academic background, I said sarcastically. Then, Chris's face turned desperate as he continued to plead with Kimberly. But when he refused to leave, Kimberly called security. Chris was practically dragged out and thrown off the premises. Later, I heard from former colleagues that Chris's massive failure led to severe backlash within the company. Even his father, the company CEO, couldn't protect him any longer. Chris was stripped of all his titles and relegated to a newly created, insignificant department, the Company History Archive Division. Now, Chris works alone in a dimly lit converted storage room, organizing old company documents. While it seems a bit pitiful, keeping him isolated and away from causing trouble to others is probably the best solution. In that sense, the CEO's handling of the situation was quite reasonable. If Chris changes his ways, maybe his father will give him a real job again someday. But I no longer care about what happens to him. Subsequently, I was appointed section chief of the sales department.
I wanted to make you a department head immediately, but my grandmother insisted that promoting you to that position within 6 months of joining would cause too much resentment. So you're a section chief for now.
Honestly, I think even being a section chief is overrating me. People are already saying I'm getting special treatment from the chairwoman. It wouldn't be good for you as the CEO to show favoritism towards me.
You haven't changed at all, still as stiff as ever.
It's not that I'm stiff. It's just that you're too flexible as a CEO. You need to be fair to all employees. You saw what happened to my former boss, Chris, when the CEO there showed him too much favoritism. Well, fairness to employees is important, I suppose. But what?
So, if we set aside your role as an employee, it's okay for me to treat you as special as I want, right?
Not as an employee. What do you mean by that?
That obliviousness of yours is just a sign of your sincerity, I suppose. We have time, so I'll take it slow.
Could you please stop speaking in such ambiguous terms?
Oh, you're so noisy.
Noisy? What do you mean noisy? Lately, Kimberly has been saying things that don't make sense more and more often. Soon, I'll have to muster the courage to directly ask her what she means by this attitude.